laptop on which I type this is, I'm ashamed to say, not primarily a tool for creation, but a pacifier and supplier of satisfaction, quite often of an infantile and puerile nature. I was always a TV junkie, but now I sometimes go days without ever turning the thing on. The old glass teat has been replaced by a smaller, shiny white plastic one that sits on my bedside table. These days I spend a lot of time using Netflix Watch Instantly feature, mainly because I'm too old and stupid to figure out how to illegally download things I'd probably rather watch. Most of the time, this is late at night, and I'm just looking for something to watch for about a half hour before I drift off. So I end up picking out something I've seen many times, often something I originally rented from Movieland Video, my hometown's purveyor of VHS cinema, when I was a kid. A quick look through my viewing history confirms this desire for bleary-eyed nostalgia. Winter and its accompanying malaise must bring out a desire for comfort movies in me, and Netflix Watch Instantly, God bless them, has them by the crateful. A partial Lonely Laptop Film Festival roll call. Dragnet, The Dream Team, Psycho, Rocky II, Parenthood, Clash of the Titans, National Lampoon's Vacation, Carrie, Stand By Me, Coal Miner's Daughter, Teen Wolf, Roxanne, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and The Toy starring Richard Pryor. So it seems this desire to have something to drone me into sleep has inadvertently brought back many a great memories associated with these movies. An embarrassing one came up right away when revisiting the 80s blockbuster comedy Dragnet. There is a scene in which Dan Aykroyd's Joe Friday documents yet another rule violation by loose cannon partner Tom Hanks. Hanks's response is to make the universal gesture for self-gratification. I originally watched Dragnet with my parents, and when this affront to living room decorum appeared on our zenith, my mother felt compelled to act. Perhaps inspired by an article in McCall's about talking frankly to one's children about sex, she turned to me and asked, "Do you know what that means? Would you like your father to tell you?" I blurted out a reflexive no, and fixed my eyes down at the DuPont Stainmaster carpet for several seconds before returning them to the screen. I was 12. There were a great many things I needed explained to me. This was not one of them. I don't know what to say about Stand By Me, except I was blown away upon discovering that its total running time is only 87 minutes. When you're young, the journey the boys make in this film is nothing short of epic. But honestly, this time I didn't make it very far. Stand By Me is such a cuddly blanket. Its wistfulness melded with my own, and I fell asleep before I could even begin to think about where it all went wrong. Rob Reiner rocked this big baby to sleep that night. Psycho is the only universally canonized movie on the list. I remember checking it out from the local library over and over again and being mesmerized by it. It's the first time I acknowledged that there was somebody making these movies, manipulating these images, and it probably led me down the path to studying film in college. But I originally watched Psycho and the rest of these movies at a time in my life when I was unencumbered by notions of taste and what people might think of mine. That is why Psycho is stored in the same cluttered childhood file as One Crazy Summer and Grease 2 and episodes of Punky Brewster that my little sisters taped, because we watched all these things ad nauseum on our 25-pound furnace-like VCR until they became one messy gestalt memory held together by Big League Chew. But what can I tell you about Psycho? It's more fun to talk about bad movies and what they do for you and to you. Bad movies are effective panacea when I'm depressed. Maybe because the possibility of disappointment is eliminated from the equation. Perhaps it correlates to the mathematics of two negatives making a positive. Like how a McGriddle is a culinary abomination except for the morning after a rough night. Then eating one is like being dipped in the river Styx. If you can hold it down, you're damn near bulletproof. Speaking of hangovers, Teen Wolf is pure cinema du McGriddle. It has helped me through more head pounders than I'd care to remember. But I won't wolf out here. Like Psycho, there have been countless scholarly treatises written about it, including one written by a film studies classmate. Once during those ultra-postmodern days of the 90s, I mentioned to him flippantly that I was going to write a paper about how Teen Wolf was all about teenage sexuality as it related to performance anxiety brought upon by premature ejaculation. He didn't know I was kidding, and he stole my idea. He made a D on his paper, and I laughed and laughed. But this sentimental sojourn my computer and I were taking every night took a bad turn into you can't go home again territory when I decided to revisit the very first movie I ever watched on a VCR, The Toy, with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. My friend Roy lived with his mother in a little townhouse that contained the first magnificent tape-playing machine I ever saw. I don't know how we came to rent The Toy, probably because there were like 3 movies at Movieland that we were allowed to rent at the time. It was probably my decision, because I was fascinated with Richard Pryor for as long as I can remember. I gravitated to his charisma long before I discovered his stand-up. Now, if you haven't seen The Toy, first of all, you're going to be just fine. Essentially, Jackie Gleason is a southern magnate with a spoiled son who decides to rent a janitor, Pryor, in one of Gleason's stores as his personal toy. I knew that I would find The Toy problematic and generally dreck-laden upon revisiting, but I figured I'd fall asleep. This night, I did not, and was unexpectedly flooded by unpleasant memories that I believe were brought upon by a discovery I could have only made watching as an adult. Early in the film, Pryor is wearing an open-collared shirt that reveals a patchwork of skin scarred by his infamous freebasing incident, in which he has set himself on fire in a coke-induced freakout that burned over half his body. That little patch of grafted skin snapped me out of the faux nostalgia of this little indulgent film series, but I kept watching. It didn't get any easier. Gleason and Pryor's performances are phoned in from the coast, as well as everyone else's. Southern accents are dropped, retrieved, and dropped again like a drunk fumbling for his keys. The approach to race is at very best well-meaning, but tone-deaf, and I just cringed watching Pryor stagger through a series of indignities and schlock that include him dressing as a maid and flopping down on whoopee cushions, or as he referred to them, fart pillows. The fart pillows were right in our 8-year-old wheelhouse, and were the reason we first employed the near-magical pause and rewind buttons. That and to gape through epileptic static at the huge breast of Gleason's trophy wife. We laughed uncontrollably about 14 times at the whoopee cushion scene and stared at a partly obscured bosom for as long as 2 8-year-olds could, which is a long time. Flatulence, breast, and orange Kool-Aid, a genuine holy trinity for a boy. But the film's cloying sentimentality started reminding me of my own childhood melancholy. About the time I first saw The Toy, my grandfather died, and I took his death rather hard and obsessed upon it. Pryor's freebase scars brought back the pain of losing my peepaw. I didn't see that one coming. I was surprised how dirty and sad I felt after watching what should have been a garden variety bad movie. Martin Scorsese said that one can get so familiar with a film that it becomes like an old friend. I really like that, and I think there are many movies, good, great, and downright bad, that are old friends of mine. The Toy, however, is like a friend you haven't seen in 25 years who owes $1,700 in back child support and can have cocaine delivered to your apartment in a half an hour. So I think I'm going to start reading before falling asleep, or taking Tylenol PMs. I went to the Wayback Well once too often and drank some tainted Capri Sun. I suppose sometimes it's best to let memories stay hazy.